The year is 2019. Following a series of disappointing and underperforming installments in the world-famous Call of Duty franchise, fans began digging a grave for Activision and its subsidiaries. Desperate to revive the franchise, Activision turned to Infinity Ward. But instead of trying something new, which is a risk that Call of Duty had been taking since Advanced Warfare with the implementation of Advanced Movement, Infinity Ward went back to their roots with Modern Warfare. What they released not only arguably saved Call of Duty, but also redefined the franchise. Here's how. So, the first point I wanted to touch upon is ultra realism. Now, Call of Duty had always been known, it's always been known as an arcade style shooter, and that means that it's mixing some realistic aspects with more vibrant, almost comic book like visuals. I mean, look at Black Ops 3. Black Ops 3 had stunning visuals, really high color saturation, really good like range on the colors. And most previous installments, even with the earlier Infinity Ward games that were known for less colorful palettes, they still had pretty good color saturation and design elements that made everything stand out. And Modern Warfare 19 took a different approach. It aimed for a hyper realistic, almost gritty aesthetic, if you will. Now, enemies, with this aesthetic, enemies blended into the environment, and this made them harder to spot. And the realistic color schemes made the game feel a lot more grounded. And this realism didn't stop at the visuals. Infinity Ward overhauled the sound design too. Guns felt heavier and they sounded punchier, and this made combat feel a lot more intense and a lot more brutal. I still remember, I keep going back to Black Ops 3, but I still remember the Peacekeeper from Black Ops 3. It sounded like a really babyish version. It was a great gun, don't get me wrong, but it had a really weak sound. By contrast, Modern Warfare set this new standard for how guns should sound, this new audio standard, and later games would follow. And this enhanced immersion across the series for the past couple of titles. Another major change was the introduction of tactical sprint. This might sound like a small detail, but it really transformed gameplay pacing. Unfortunately, it did take a toll on the left Joy-Con on controllers. This shift towards this hyper realism, it really flipped the switch for Call of Duty developers, and it set this new tone, this really gritty tone, this gritty standard for future games to come. All right, now the second feature I wanted to touch upon was the gunsmith. Now, the gunsmith wasn't actually the newest a new feature in Call of Duty when Modern Warfare released. It was actually originally in Black Ops 3, but it was really revolutionized in Modern Warfare with how Infinity Ward executed it. So Gunsmith basically allowed players to create unique gun variants by adding customizing attachments. Now, these attachments weren't the same across the board like it is in Black Ops 6, Vanguard, so on and so forth. Based on the type of gun, like an assault rifle would have like an M4 would have a certain barrel, an AK would have a certain barrel. You can make it such that an M4 could become an M16. You can make an AK-47, an AK-74U. You can make an MP5, an MP5K, or like an MP5 SD, stuff like that. This really opened up endless customization possibilities, and it introduced a level of personalization that people have never really experienced up until this point in Call of Duty, just this unprecedented customizability. And this was a really big shift from the Pick 10 system, which was introduced back in Black Ops 2 2012. And that had defined Call of Duty for years. So you only had 10 slots. So between that, you had to pick out your perks, your gun attachments, your tacticals, your lethals. There were two sides to this. So the lack of this limitation meant that you could add multiple attachments without sacrificing the perks, and this made some setups feel overpowered, but at the same time, you could really fine tune your loadout to create what you wanted. So if you wanted like a run and gun, you could have the MP5K with like fast mags and like sleight of hand, and you could run a suppressor if you really wanted to. And this freedom was really excited, but in my opinion, it kind of disrupted the game balance. And this is something that Call of Duty has continued to grapple with. You could see in Gunsmith, you could have loads of attachments on like an assault rifle, and you could really play it like an SMG. Whereas in older Call of Duties, you'd have to sacrifice your attachments sometimes to get better perks. Vice versa, if you want to have like a really good gun, you'd have to get rid of some of your perks and stuff like that. And The next point I wanted to talk about was Warzone. Now, funny enough, Warzone actually wasn't Activision's first attempt at Battle Royale. We all know that Blackout actually tried to capture the trend right in the prime of PUBG and Fortnite. And Warzone kind of succeeded in a way. It kind of irks me to say this because I really don't like Warzone, but it succeeded in a way that Blackout didn't. It just released during like a time where the world was upside down during the pandemic. And since its launch, Warzone has really changed the ecosystem around which Call of Duty functions. Activision really incorporates some of Warzone's aspects into multiplayer with the storyline and even campaign. Because I mean, if you look back to Modern Warfare, when Alex supposedly dies at the end of the campaign, he shows up in like a Warzone update with Ghost Simon Riley coming back, and obviously Simon Riley was a pretty fundamental part to Modern Warfare 2, which came out in 2022. And unfortunately, people felt that Activision prioritized Warzone over the main games, which are games that people spent $70 for. Warzone's free. People are spending their hard earned money on this video game, and people thought it wasn't getting nearly as much love as Warzone. People just thinking that Activision was just too focused on this battle royale game. And while it has brought new opportunities, it's also sparked debate on Activision's dedication to battle royale as opposed to the Call of Duty experience. And you can see that even nowadays. I mean, with like the storyline and how that's going with Warzone, people are just like, why can't Activision just focus on making Call of Duty like it has for the past decade and a half, nearly 2 decades? And the last point I want to talk about is the infamous skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM, as some people call it. For those of you that don't know, it's basically the system that matches players with others of similar skill level. Now, in theory, this is a pretty fair approach. Now, if a player has a 0.8 kill death ratio, in theory, they should face others around that range, and the same goes for higher KDs. So if you're like 1.2, 1.3, so on and so forth. Now, the issue stems from how Infinity Ward and Modern Warfare 2019 implemented SBMM and how they executed it. The algorithm seemed pretty extreme. Now, if you had a single good game where you dropped 40 kills and only died like 10, 15 times, um, but you had like the past 3, 4 games, you had like a sub 1 kill death ratio. Um, you'd be placed with highly skilled players, and it doesn't take into account long term stats. The algorithm is very shallow like that. And I personally found the system punishing and inconsistent, and this really impacted the enjoyment of the game. Now, obviously, SBMM is it's a sound concept in theory, as is a lot of other things, but it basically set a precedent with an overly aggressive and an overly shallow algorithm, and the franchise has continued to feel the effects. I mean, I experienced this in Cold War. I really felt it in the Vanguard beta, the Modern Warfare 2 beta, and it's even a challenge for me now in Black Ops 6. And I think that it's still haunting Call of Duty's online experience to this day. Now, Modern Warfare left a lasting legacy that changed the series. With its emphasis on realism, customization through Gunsmith, the emergence of Warzone, and a controversial approach to matchmaking, Modern Warfare 2019 set the stage for what Call of Duty would become. But with these innovations came new challenges, ones the franchise is still facing. I want to know, what do you guys think? Do you guys think that Modern Warfare 2019 changed Call of Duty for the better or for the worse? And if so, what do you think Modern Warfare really impacted? And maybe there's something I didn't touch upon that you want to add in the comments below. As always, thank you guys again so much for the support. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and be sure to drop a sub as well. Thank you guys again so much for watching. This is Bollywood Bandit signing off. Peace out.